Okay, everyone, I think we'll get started. If you're looking for the Northeast District Fisheries Informational Meeting, you're in the right place. I want to thank you all for tuning in and spending a little time with us this evening. We're going to give you some information about Northeast Nebraska District, and hopefully you'll learn a few things of what we've been up to for the past year. I just want to remind you a little bit of housekeeping here before we get started. If you have a question, and we encourage you to have questions, use the chat button at the bottom of the screen. Type your questions in. We have Jordan Cott hanging out in the background. He's going to compile those questions. We're going to put those together and answer those at the end of our presentation. So about 35 minutes or so from now, we'll get to those questions. So keep them coming in as you're watching this tonight and have questions. Type those in. Here's who we are. I'm Jeff Shuckman. I'm the fisheries manager for the Northeast District. And we got Phil Chavala and Rebecca Munner. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later here too. I've been around a long time. I'm starting on my 44th year here. Phil's getting to be an old timer too. He's been here 26 years and Rebecca's been here about 4 now. So we're going to share this information. Here's our contact information. We're going to put this up again at the end of the informational meeting when we're answering questions. We encourage you to get a hold of us anytime you want. Stop by the office. We're all based out of Norfolk. Give us a call. Send us an email, however you want to get a hold of us. And another chance to get in touch with us and visit with us in person is going to be an Ask a Biologist night that we're having across the state this year. And ours in Norfolk will be June 17th at Skyview Lake. It's a family fishing night event. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. in the evening. And we're going to have a biologist or 2 or maybe 3 there. You can come visit with us, hang out with us, we'll answer your questions, get to know us a little bit. And then we'll try to catch a bluegill while we're there. And there's another one of these events on, I believe it's July 9th too. And we always have somebody hanging around at these events to answer questions. So come on out and visit with us. Just a little bit about what we're going to talk about, a little general outline of the district. I'm going to talk about some access and habitat projects, give some updates. We're going to have a lot of area fishing information tonight to share with you and give you some tips on where you can go this year. We're going to talk about aquatic invasive species. And then again, at the end, we're going to have our contact information so you can get a hold of us. We had some changes in the districts again this year. We recreated the old North Central District. So there we're back to 6 fisheries districts in the state, and the North Central District is based out of Valentine. So I had to take a few counties from the Northwest District and the Northeast District to make that happen. So the Northeast District is down to 22 counties at this time, which is still plenty big. Basically bordered by the Missouri River on the north and the East Platte River on the south. We will continue to manage the Calamus Reservoir and Gracie Creek trout pond area as part of this district, even though some of that is just outside of our district in the South Central, but the North Central. We are going to maintain that out of the Norfolk office. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the access stuff and some aquatic habitat projects just briefly. Here's kind of an outline of what I want to talk about. You can see the bullet points here, and I'll run through these real quick. First thing I want to mention is the new fishing pier and fishing deck at Willow Creek Reservoir. It's not brand new. We finished it about a year ago at this time. If you remember back to 2019, the catastrophic flooding we had in this district and in the state, well, all 3 of the fishing decks on the breakwaters at Willow Creek were damaged at that time or destroyed. This is the first one that's been rebuilt. It's on what we call the Zimmer Shelter boat ramp on the southwest part of the lake by the boat ramp there. And it's a pile-driven structure with a deck on it and a covering on it. And I don't think a future flood is going to destroy this one. I think you could drive a tank on it. It'd probably hold up. Very nice fishing pier. I guarantee you guys catch a lot of fish off of it. That's always been a good breakwater to fish off of anyway. And as you can see here, it is 100% ADA accessible, has a big concrete parking area, sidewalk leading to it. And it's got the cover for those people that need it. A lot of times people with disabilities need some kind of cover from the sunlight. So we've got that set up. It's all ready to go. If you didn't get a chance to enjoy it last summer, go out and enjoy it this spring when the crappie are biting. Another access point I want to talk about is the Verdell landing up on the Missouri River. Been kind of a hot topic here lately. We're getting a lot of calls on that. The Verdell landing boat ramp was in pretty bad shape. Those of you that have used it or tried to use it when the water was down in winter flows on the Missouri River, we had an area where you could actually drop off the end of it and damage your trailer. People were putting in on the cobble rock next to it. Well, we came up with a plan to replace that, and don't look too much into the schematics on the drawing, but we replace the ramp. The slope is going to be a little different. It's a 14% slope, so it's a steeper slope than the old ramp, which allowed us to get out to deeper water, which allowed us to daylight out on the bottom, so you're not going to drop off this thing anymore. And the other thing that we're going to add is a push-in heavy-duty metal dock system. And the dock is kind of a hybrid. It's got floats on it, even though it pushes in and matches the slope of that boat ramp. It's got floats on it, and it's got some pistons on it, so it's got 2 to 3 feet of play at least with that float system on there, which is sorely needed on the river, because there's, even at Verdell with the peaking out of Fort Randall Dam, there's about a 2-foot daily fluctuation in water levels there. And of course, with the core, we never know quite what they're going to pour out of there. So we've got to have some built-in features to adjust for that. And this is a dock that'll work for that. And here are some up-to-date pictures of what it's looking like. We're getting really close, folks, on getting this thing open. We couldn't start on this until the water went down to winter flows, which is around 8,000 CFS this winter out of Fort Randall. We had excellent weather to get the concrete poured. Husker Engineering out of Burwell had the bid on this thing, did a great job for us. I wish I could show you some great videos of pushing the lower section into the river. But as you can see on the photo on the upper right-hand corner, this thing extends out in the river quite a ways. And as it sets in these pictures at low water, there's 5 feet of water off the end of that ramp and sediment out there that you will not drop off this ramp. So the curved center portion is where that slide-in dock is going to go. And we'll get that put in here one of these days. But the upper apron is ready to go. The sidewalk's done. We've got final grading to do, put the light fixtures up, get that dock in place, and this thing will open. In about 2 weeks, we're going to be putting out a news release saying that this thing is open. And I know a lot of people can't wait for that to happen, including myself. Here's what that dock looks like. It's an angle iron structure, heavily built. We just finished putting the decking on it last week. It's a dock system that the state of South Dakota uses. Those have been up the north side of Lewis and Clark Lake at the Midway area. I have seen these before. They actually built it at the prison at Springfield. So it was built close by, and we're pretty excited to see how it works out for us. I think it's going to be a good dock for y'all. While we're mentioning access up on that part of our district, I have to mention access at Lewis and Clark Lake this year. Could be a little difficult at times. You're probably all aware that we're doing a rehab project, a renovation project at Wygon Marina. All the docks are out now. We had to close the area temporarily last fall, which I know was a pain during the fall walleye bite. It's going to remain closed for most of the summer while they do some dredging there. Take that depth down to about 8 feet. They're going to build a breakwater, put in a great big floating breakwater, all new docks, all new slips, give it a major facelift. So bear with us during those construction times, but keep in mind that we're going to maintain the South Shore boat ramp, Miller Creek boat ramp, and Bloomfield area boat ramp. And we'll have some extra mode areas up there for parking. We're going to try to accommodate people as best we can. Last summer, we did dig out South Shore again. The mouth of South Shore Bay had filled in with lateral drift shale. It had done that 14, 15 years ago, and we dug it out. Well, it did it again with all these 60-mile-an-hour northwest winds. So thanks to the parks guys for lining up a contractor out of the Hardington area who had an excavator out and dug that out. We got it down to an elevation of 1,200 at the bottom, which puts it 6 to 8 feet deep going out of there, depending on the elevation of Lewis Clark Lake. We did it the old-fashioned way. Didn't have a GPS on that excavator, so yours truly was out in the boat with a range pole, and he was digging until we got down to that 1,200 elevation, and it worked out great. This guy was great with that thing. We got it done in 2 to 3 days, and so South Shore is open again. Another access I want to mention is out at the Calamus Reservoir. It's Gracie Creek access, downstream of the trout pond. And we rehabbed the trout pond several years ago following another big flood. And we redid the area downstream of the tube where the white bass come in to spawn. We had that big run in the spring and made it a lot more user-friendly and improved the habitat there. Well, anyway, we do take a front deck mower out there and some trimmers and chemically treat some of the weeds out there. We want to keep that place opened up and the grass mowed and the weeds kept at bay so we can have a nice, safe place for people to go fish. Very popular area in the spring of the year. In the first couple, 3 weeks in May when the white bass come in, we wanted a good, safe place to take kids fishing too. So we're going to spend a lot of time and have spent a lot of time out there with maintenance on that area. Just wanted to let you know that. Now, some aquatic habitat projects that we're looking at. We are in the third rendition, I guess, of our aquatic habitat plan. And any of those of you that tuned in Monday night, Jeff Jackson gave a talk on this. There are about 4 lakes that we've got on the list right now. And this is not probably everything we're going to try to get in there yet, nor all the access. But some of the big ones are going to be Willow Creek, Buckskin Hills, and Red Fox. Narborough State Park Pond, which has had a leakage problem. Yeah, they're getting ready to work on it now. I think the bids were open for that last week, and work's going to start on that pretty quick. We'll get that pond back up and running. But Willow Creek needs some help, needs some habitat improvements, some offshore breakwaters, some cove deepening, possibly some more jetties, and some large woody debris, some big crappie brush piles like we used to have in that lake. And we've got a pretty good vision for what we want to do with that. And it's a few to several years down the road yet, and we'll be putting out more information on that as we get closer. Buckskin Hills, since it was built in the mid-1980s, it needs a facelift. It's had sedimentation problems in the arms. Still a nice little fishing lake, but it needs some work, needs some shoreline stabilization, needs some habitat work, and we need to really improve the angler access there. We did put a brand new boat dock in at Buckskin Hills last year, a VW dock from Spirit Lake, Iowa. So you're going to find a much nicer launch area at Buckskin Hills. That's a fairly new boat ramp there too. So we're in good shape there as far as the boat ramp dock goes. At Red Fox, we want to do some boat ramp work. We just recently put a hand-me-down dock on there to help things out. First time we've got a dock on there. We want to redesign outlet pipe. We want to put in a rock jetty for habitat and fishing access, and we'd like to renovate that fishery and get it back to where it used to be. So those are just some projects coming up that we'll talk about in the future in the next few years, and hopefully we'll bring those to fruition. I'm going to go on to some fish data here a little bit. I want to talk about Calamus Reservoir because it's near and dear to my heart. I love that place out there. We've had some issues with walleye recruitment the last 3 years because we've had very, very, very poor shad production. As the shad production goes, so the Calamus fishery goes. 2025, we had an excellent shad year. Lots of young year shad. Any of you guys that have fished out there knew that. And it benefits the fishery. And in our fall gillnet sample for walleye, we saw our numbers basically double. We're pretty excited. We're going to have a good fishing year. We're on the upswing out there again. And about close to 20% of the catchable size walleye in that lake were over 18 inches. So with the 2 and 2 limit that we have on walleye, length limit on walleye out there, that we think again this year there's going to be some what we call full limits caught, which are the 2 between 15 and 18 and the 2 over 18 will be caught this year. So we're looking for a good year on walleye. White bass fishing last year was fantastic. It should be that way again this year. Our numbers were the 3rd highest we've seen in our gill nets with an excellent size structure. Again, the abundant young of the year shad last year Really helped the white bass. These things are fatter than footballs. We had excellent recruitment. We had tons of young of the year white bass, and we had excellent recruitment on walleye too. I need to mention that we've got a really strong 2025 year class of both walleye and white bass coming on. So enjoy those white bass out there this year. We are going to have a creel survey. We got a creel clerk hired for Calamus Reservoir. We're going to have a creel survey out there this year. So please take the time to visit with them when they're asking you some questions out there. We'll try to make that as quick and painless as we can. We want to get a handle on angler use and angler harvest because we haven't done a creel for several years out there, and we need to get that information again. Wipers in catching our gillnet suffered a little bit this year. We were not able to stock wipers due to the poor production in the hatchery system. If you add 2 or 3 young of the year wipers onto that bar for 2025 on the graph, it would be back up about where we have been the last 8 to 10 years. Anecdotally, we did see a lot of wiper activity in August and September on the lake last year. They were really pounding the shad. I saw a lot of 18 to 20 inch wipers caught by anglers. So we're anticipating a good year on wipers out there. And the catfish numbers really look good. You know, it's a destination lake for catfish tournaments. It's also a destination lake for ordinary, everyday catfishermen, and our numbers are really good out there. So we're looking at a very good year on catfish out there again. And with that, that's a quick rundown of what I want to talk about. I'm going to hand it over to Phil.
All right, thanks, Jeff. I'm going to talk to you about our other large reservoir in the district, which is Lewis and Clark Lake. If you look at the graph on the right here, you can see we're just short of that 15 per gill net. That's kind of the measure we look at to be pretty satisfied with what the populations are doing out there. But yeah, kind of shoot for that 15 per net. If you look on the upper left graph, you'll see that's the wall broken down as a walleye catch rate and size structure distribution. We'll see we tailed off a little bit on fish over 15 inches. Not sure at this point if that's kind of an anomaly or there was quite a bit of angling pressure up there compared to previous years. So that could have had an impact on it also. You look at the graph below that's the sauger breakdown. We did bump up a little bit as far as they go, as far as fish over 15 inches. So overall, things are looking pretty good. We've got really good recruitment going on up there. So the future is bright at Lewis and Clark for walleye. You saw in that last graph where those populations really fluctuate over time. Big role in that is the flow going through the system. Lewis and Clark is the smallest reservoir on the Missouri River system, and the turnover time is pretty quick there, even in a normal year. Average year that lake exchanges its total water volume in about 7 days. Put that in perspective, back in 2011 when we had those really high flows going through, that turnover time was actually less than 24 hours. So on these graphs here, the left one shows you the relationship between those flows and the walleye gillnet catch rate. So you can see, certainly when we're below 25,000 CFS, those catch rates are pretty good and we're keeping fish in the reservoir. The bottom right graph kind of shows kind of a little more pictorial view of that. Shows you what those walleye populations look like in those low versus high flow years. That red line is the mean daily outflow. And you can see, especially in 2011 through 2021, we had relatively high flows. The key is getting low flow years back to back. And you can see that's what we had in the 2000s, and then now the last 4 years or so. And that's really helping out the walleye population. This next graph here demonstrates what we see for young of the year up there. We do electrofishing in the fall, either late September, possibly early October, just to gauge what production is like that year in the reservoir. You can see we've had some really great year classes of walleye the last 5 years, and really 8 out of the last 10 have been really good. And the sauger also, the blue bars, you can see we've had record levels of sauger production, 4 out of the last 6 years, 7 years. So things are looking really good. This is, going to be good for future fishing up there as long as we keep those flows, as long as Mother Nature keeps those flows fairly moderate going through the system. The other sport fish species up there that we kind of keep track of, white bass, just like Jeff was talking about at Calamus. They're a great sport fish, fun to catch, but their numbers have been pretty low in Lewis and Clark certainly since 2011. We had that one high year in 16, and we did see some angler catch as a result of that in those following years. But it's been pretty poor comparatively, I guess, to that 2000 to 2010 time period. But even back then, the numbers didn't really show up real well, even though the fishing was pretty darn good. But you can see in the bottom left, the young of the year catch is kind of on an increasing trend. The gillnet catch looks good there on paper, but that was all but one of those fish were young of the year. So once again, we keep those flows relatively low going through the reservoir. Should only benefit white bass and the anglers chasing them. On the right is channel catfish catch rates for Lewis and Clark. You can see we dropped off quite a bit this year. Once again, like those walleye over 15 inches might be sort of an anomaly, but we'll keep an eye on that and see how things go. We lost numbers and some size structure also, if you go by that. But if you saw in Jeff's graph from Calamus on the catfish, there was a period there where we had some pretty low catch rates on them. Not necessarily representative of what's going on, because those subsequent years when we did have the high catch, there were high numbers of fish, but there were also some bigger fish in that mix also. So there were fish there. We just weren't catching them for whatever reason. Could be going on here at Lewis and Clark too. So that's why we don't just rely on 1 year's data. We track it and kind of pay attention to those things. So Jeff talked about Calamus. I talked about Lewis and Clark. Any of these, there's more data and some reports on our website. In those sampling reports, the address to go directly to them is down there along the bottom. Otherwise, this screenshot in the upper left is the main page of our website. You can go to the fish tab and click on where to fish, and that'll kind of lead you there through about 3 or 4 clicks. You'll get there. Otherwise, you can go to the search icon there, type in fish stocking or fish sampling reports, and that'll take you there a little bit quicker. I'm going to visit with you a little bit about the paddlefish seasons this last year. I'll give you some background first. The season runs from June 1st through the 30th, so the whole month of June. And the application period to put in for those tags is March 1st through the 14th. So it's going on right now. And if you're interested in pursuing them with archery, you have till Saturday to put in for that. So if you're interested, you better get after it. We give out 275 permits for that season, and 5% of those are reserved for non-residents. If those don't get purchased, then they go back for resident purchase. The total awarded for 2025 was 262. That number is a little bit off because buddy applications, as I understand it, are treated as one application. So the full 275 did go out. But if you use that number, that's 22% of applicants ended up drawing tags. If you look the next couple lines down, we can look at the preference points. And this shows you that you had to have at least 2 preference points in order to draw in 2025. Not that that's a guarantee with 2, because only 90 or 10% with 2 points didn't draw. So keep that in mind. It's getting more popular. So it does take a little bit longer to draw than it has in the past. The season was a fairly successful one once again. You can see where that success and harvest really bumped up in 2016. That follows a move from July season pre-2016 to June season, as I mentioned on the last page. So you can see before that change, we averaged about 84 paddlefish harvested a year. Now we're up to 175 since 2016. So archers are certainly much more successful in that June season. Moving on to snagging. That season runs the month of October. The application period is July 1 to the 1st to the 14th. And we give out 1,600 permits for that. And once again, that 5% non-resident portion, which equals about 80 permits a year. Awarded tags were about 1,500. Applications were just over 2,600. So that's 58% of folks drew. Here you can see you have a better chance of drawing those tags, based, if nothing else, on the number available. But you can see if you had a point or one or more preference points, you were guaranteed to draw. And even at 0 points, you had almost a 40% chance to draw. So something to keep in mind, if you're interested in paddle fishing, and you want to get that preference point, but you're going with a group of people who aren't going to draw till the following year, it would be best to buy a preference point instead of put in, because like this year, there was a 40% chance of drawing with no preference point. So if you don't want to go, but you want to get that point, buy it, don't apply. This is kind of going the opposite of the archery season as far as snagging goes. We do have a protected slot during the snagging season. It's 35 to 45. If it's between that measurement's from the front of the eye to the natural fork of the tail. If it does fall in that 35 to 45 length range, it does need to be released. You can see we're tailing off there quite a bit. There is some concern with the Missouri River staff and us about paddlefish numbers and even condition and stuff. So we're continuing to keep an eye on that. In fact, South Dakota and Nebraska do have a monitoring project starting up next year. They're going to implant some tags into some fish, both paddlefish and some silver carp, to monitor movement, overlap, things like that. So that'll be something we might be talking about in a few years. That's scheduled to be a 3 to 4 year project, I believe. So if you were like me and went snagging this year, you had high hopes because the gates were closed. Well, it didn't equate to a very good year for the snaggers. It's been getting better since 23, but still pretty poor comparatively to previous years. So that's all I have. And with that, I will hand it off to Rebecca to talk over some things a little more locally.
Struggling to get the slide to change here. There we go. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to transition into discussing where some good places are going to be to go fishing in Northeast District. First off, we have a lot of opportunity with the variety of species that we stock throughout the district. This is a comprehensive list of the species that we're requesting to stock and their numbers. This list is susceptible to change because it all depends what our hatcheries can do for us. And, things happen, whether, nature takes control sometimes, and that's just life. But as you can see, we do plan to stock quite a few species throughout the district to create opportunities for anglers. These are results from our 2025 electrofishing for largemouth bass. Um, we sampled out at Mascentine, Summit, Cramper, Cub Creek, and Buckskin in 2025. And first off, we'll start with Mascentine. Mascentine had suffered a fish kill in 2023, the summer of 2023. And at that time, we didn't really think that largemouth bass were affected. We didn't see a lot of dead bass and during the fish kill investigation. But when we were out sampling in 2025, we didn't see any bass that were over 15 inches in there. So that kind of tells us something that the bigger bass in the population did take a hit from that fish kill, by the way the population is structured out there right now. So good news is that there is good recruitment out there yet, and fish by this summer should be growing into those larger size classes. At Summit and Cramper, our bass are looking really good. We have a graduate student from University of Nebraska Kearney who was pictured on that last slide. He's doing some more intensive bass sampling at Summit and Cramper. That's part of a statewide project where they're modeling bass regulations. But we aren't anticipating any regulation changes at either of those lakes at this time. Cub Creek is no longer in our district, which is why it has that little star down there. But we did get out there and sample, and things are looking really good out there. There's some opportunities to catch bass 20 inches and larger, and plenty in that 15 to 20 inch range as well. Buckskin also has a relatively balanced size structure, which is what we really like to see. And all of these lakes that we sampled had pretty good body condition, so nothing to be concerned about there. Other opportunities for bass in the district include Grove, Maple Creek, Skyview, and Powder Creek. I wanted to mention real quick about Powder Creek. We have been doing some transfers of some medium-sized bass out there because we have some issues with some overabundance of some smaller panfish in the lake. So these medium-sized bass are a little more effective than the bigger bass at kind of chowing down on those smaller panfish in there. So hopefully they will reduce their numbers a little bit, which would overall help the size structure of the panfish. So we're going to be keeping our eye on things out there at Powder Creek in the next few years. These are results from our 2025 panfish sampling. We were able to get to all of these lakes last year. Bluegill at Mascentine and Maple Creek are probably your best bets right now for catching bluegill that are 8 inches and larger in the Northeast District. But Grove is also promising as well to provide some opportunities for those bigger bluegill as well. Grove is one of those kind of weird lakes. The last few years we've had people calling in saying that they're struggling to catch panfish out there for whatever reason. So we've been following up those phone calls with surveys, and even though things are still looking good, size structure, things look okay. The numbers might be a little bit more reduced than what we've seen in the past, but nevertheless, it seems like things are still doing okay out there. For crappie, Maple Creek and Summit appear to be the best bets to catch crappie 10 inches and larger from our survey results. We've been doing a winter ice creel survey out at Cramper Lake, which means we've been interviewing anglers as they come off the water. And from that, we've been able to get our hands on some of those 10-inch crappie from that are being harvested out of there. So Things are still promising at Cramper, even though looks like we have really excellent recruitment happening out there right now. So things in the next few years should be good out there. For perch in the district, a good population of perch is developing in Goose Lake right now. Um, the time is now to go out and fish these lakes, fish Goose Lake especially, because since the 2022 renovation out there, we've been sampling, and this is what we've been finding for perch. Enjoy the new lake effect while it's happening right now. There's should be a fair number of perch exceeding 10 inches in there, and quite possibly even pushing 12 inches this spring. We had some perch, which is pictured here on the right in 2026, which was just earlier this week. That one was just short of 11 inches. So things are looking good up there. Another opportunity in the district would be out at Swan Lake. The thing I'm going to say about Swan is it looks like you kind of have to sort through a lot of those smaller perch before you can catch some of those bigger ones. But that's not the worst way I can think of to spend a day. So for channel catfish populations in the district, most lakes get stocked with 10-inch and larger, or 10-inch catfish, and they have strong numbers. Skyview, Maskentine, Powder Creek all have really good size structure and some opportunities for those 24-inch and larger catfish. Buckskin also will provide some opportunities as well. We just didn't catch as many in our netting survey. Most lakes throughout the district exhibit moderate to high numbers and good size structures, so none of them should be overlooked if you want to seek catfish. For walleye and saugeye in the district, we are stocking advanced fingerlings in 4 lakes in our district, and those lakes are Summit, Maple Creek, Cramper, and Skyview. And the size structure looks really good. In the last 2 years, 2024 and 2025, we were able to get out to all 4 of those lakes that are getting those advanced fingerlings, which are about 8 inches going in. And things are looking really good in other lakes as well for walleye and saugeye. There are opportunities to catch northern pike out at Grove Lake. Grove Lake is a naturally reproducing with northern pike. This graph shows the size structure that we caught when we were out sampling in the last few surveys. So plenty of opportunities, even some to catch 30-inch and larger pike. We also have some opportunities in Goose Lake to catch pike as well. As I said earlier, things are shaping up out there since the 2022 renovation. But these are some pictures from the last few years, and you can kind of see the progression size-wise. We just sampled out there earlier this week, and we had one that was almost 34 inches and a half a dozen that were 30 inches as well. So they're also in really good condition, so no shortage of food out there for them either. As part of our management efforts of our inland waters, we put a fair bit of effort into trying to help prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species that could be coming from the Lewis and Clark area and the Missouri River. So this year, we're going to have 2 aquatic invasive species inspectors. We'll have one up on Lewis and Clark Lake, and we'll have one that's kind of roving around the district to some of our other, inland waters, interviewing anglers before they go into the water and entrance and exit inspections. I mentioned already or Jeff mentioned that Wygon is going to be closed this year, and they are because they're doing some improvements. But with this being closed, we're anticipating some more pressure on our other boat ramps. So anticipating a few more day trippers as well, meaning that they're going to be going and putting in for one day and then possibly going to other lakes. So please make sure that everything's getting cleaned, drained, and dried before you're going anywhere else throughout the state or any other waters, I guess. This is a distribution map of aquatic invasive species in Nebraska. Thankfully, the zebra mussels are relatively contained to just the Missouri River system right now. But we do have to deal with curly leaf pondweed. It kind of comes on early, and it's a problem because it comes on early and chokes out the native vegetation that's in there. And then it dies back before the summer comes. So we've been doing some experimental treatments for non-native curly leaf throughout the state. And we treated last year out at Mascentine for curly leaf. And we had some success with that. So we did that again. Actually, it was treated just last week using a low dose early treatment and saw some success last year. So we're going to be monitoring that again this year. If you get somewhere and you see there's a lot of weeds at the boat ramp or any places where you're trying to fish, please give us a call and let us know. We can't be everywhere. So any little tips like that are appreciated and kind of help focus our efforts. So we do treat around boat ramps and areas to open up angler access. So if you're out there out and about, just give us a call and don't be afraid to let us know what's going on. So that's all we had. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, we'll get to some questions here as we're going through the questions. You got more that pop in, make sure you type them in that chat box. We're going to jump right in here. Jeff, can you give us an update on the St. Helena boat dock or any info that you have on that access point?
It's St. Helena. That's Cedar County access. That's not a Game and Parks area. We have worked some with Cedar County to have them put some rock in, and I got them in contact with some consultants to try to come up with some ideas there. St. Helena access can be somewhat poor when the river drops for the winter. But right now, to tell you the truth, I haven't even been there this winter. But that's the Cedar County access. If there's some issues with that, you got to call the Cedar County commissioners.
What about smallmouth bass waters that also have boating access in your district? What do you have to offer for anglers?
For smallmouth, we've got very good smallmouth bass fishing. Missouri River, Lewis and Clark Lake is about as good as it gets in this state. We didn't include that in our graphs because South Dakota does a lot of the sampling up there for smallmouth bass. But I can tell you, visiting with anglers and from personal experience in the tournaments that are up there, the bluffs, the dam, the marinas on Lewis and Clark are really good. That upper unchannelized river from Niobrara up through Verdell and all the way to Boyd County. Boyd County's got a lot of natural rock up there. Got a lot of smallmouth up there. So good opportunity for smallmouth up to 20+ inch fish. And I also want to mention, since I mentioned Sunshine Bottom, we are looking at, we've got an idea to try to get a boat dock in there. When we redid that ramp there, it's difficult with the 3-foot daily fluctuation in water levels due to the peaking out of Randall to put a conventional boat dock in there. And we've got an idea that we think we've got a good plan to get a design to put a dock in there. So just want people to know, if they're listening, use the boat ramp at Sunshine Bottom. We're going to try to improve that access with a boat dock.
Okay. A couple questions here regarding bank access, specifically at Buckskin and Summit, but also just generally across your district, some good bank spot availability. Phil, you look like you're jumping up for that. Yeah, but Jeff, go ahead too.
Go ahead. Someone else. We put a brand new fishing dock in, floating fishing pier at Grove, try to improve access up there. So I encourage people to go up and use that. Willow Creek has a number of breakwaters that are good for fishing access, especially when the crappie are biting in the spring of the year when they come in to spawn. And Summit has 13 breakwaters on it that provide good access. And Skyview Lake's got 2 fishing piers on it now. Mascontine's got a fishing pier on it. Mascontine has some fingers on the upper end of the lake that were built into a rehab project a number of years ago that provide good bank fishing access. The Lower Elkhorn NRD does a great job of keeping that mode and getting good access to that thing. So there's a number of places to fish for bank access in the district. If you want some tips, give us a call.
And I'll add to that. If Jeff mentioned, Summit Lake has a lot of jetties and provides some great shoreline access there. Specifically talking about what he had asked about. Buckskin, on the other hand, is pretty limited bank angling wise. We are hoping to address that somewhat with that Aquatic Habitat project when that rolls around, add in some structures and maybe a fishing pier to provide a little more access.
All right. And then you mentioned Summit there. We have some yellow bass in there. You guys, I believe you've also found a couple other invasive species up there. Just kind of talk about that's the status of those species and any impacts that they're having to the fishery that you observed impacts that to the fishery up there.
We're keeping a close eye on Summit Lake. We're going to sample that fishery every year because the yellow bass numbers are increasing. Unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do about it this time. We've also found common carp and a lot of gar. So we've had help from some people putting undesirable fish in there. And about all we can do this time is monitor it. And, it's tough to do some corrective stocking to try to get something on top of the yellow bass. Right now, I'd encourage people to keep them and eat them. They are a good eating fish, and they are of decent size in there. So keep them and eat them. But as far as getting rid of them, there's probably not a lot we can do. We hope down the road that we don't have to renovate Summit again. We did that in 2000 or 2001. We still got a good bass population in there, got some great crappie and bluegill. So things are doing okay now, but they are a competitor. And we're just going to have to keep an eye on it at this point.
Sure. In that same vein with AIS species, jumping up river to Lewis and Clark and on the Missouri River, obviously we have zebra mussels up there, one of the few areas in the state that we have zebra mussels. Talk about just the impacts that zebra mussels have had both in Lewis and Clark and on the river below to the fishery that we have in both those areas.
There has been some changes. We're seeing the water clear up. Jokingly, years ago, we used to call Lewis and Clark lousy and cloudy because it was always dirty. Can't say that anymore. It's pretty clear. We're seeing visibility at some points down 8 feet deep. So we're seeing a lot more aquatic vegetation growing around the shorelines and on the face of the dam and in the marinas and the boat ramp bays, to the point where we're having to treat that now. We're having to treat the boat ramp bays for vegetation because you can't hardly get a boat out of it. The vegetation gets so thick. And we've got Eurasian water milfoil, which we don't want spread around either. But we're seeing some changes in the fish population up there too. We're seeing more largemouth bass. We're seeing quite a few yellow perch. There's a pretty good yellow perch fishery developing in Lewis and Clark Lake. Seeing more northern pike. So it's starting to evolve a little bit with the clear water and the abundant vegetation. And I think we're going to continue to see that evolve. And same way, down below Gavin's, we have clearer water down there. And that's one of the reasons that the paddlefish archery success, even though we moved it up to June, which is a better month to shoot paddlefish, but the water's clearer and you can see those paddlefish so much easier now. That drives success. When you can see the fish, obviously you're going to be able to get an arrow in them. So it is changing that system. The other thing that I hate about zebra mussels is the impact on the intake structures that come off the lake, including the turbines and cooling lines at Gavin's Point Dam. It's costing the taxpayer millions of dollars a year on that. And then also cutting your feet up along the bank lines in Lewis and Clark Lake when the kids are out swimming and playing in the water. I had my grandkids get their feet cut up a couple years ago from that. So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, absolutely. What about muskie opportunities up in your district? What do we got and outlook for this year?
I saw that one question come in on the chat line. We stock 1,000 muskies every 3 years at Calamus Reservoir, or whenever we get fish in the system every 2 to 3 years. They're doing quite well. We didn't have time to include some pictures of muskie in there, but we see them every year when we're collecting shad up there. Anglers are catching them every year, particularly on the west end up towards the Gracie Creek area. They'll be spawning in the smartweed beds here in early May. We also have muskie at Lake 20 at Fremont, and they're doing pretty well down there too. So there's 2 opportunities in the state to catch muskies.
Sure. What about white crappie in the Northeast area?
Willow Creek, probably our most abundant. Most of our lakes have black crappie in them. They're better suited for our small flood control reservoirs and clearer water. Years ago, we stocked white crappie into Willow Creek, take advantage of the more turbid water there. And so we do have a mixed population of black and white crappie in there. Otherwise, we're primarily black crappie.
To add to that, we did have a meeting with DeSoto Refuge this year. When you picture Northeast Nebraska, maybe you don't picture DeSoto being as part of that, but they're having some fishery issues down there and would like to get crappie going back in there. They have blacks, but we are discussing maybe if we can get our hands on some white crappie, maybe doing some stocking of them down there to take advantage of that situation Jeff was just talking about, with kind of some turbid water and more of a piscivorous type. White crappie, a little more piscivorous, might be able to take better advantage in a situation like that. So,
sure. What about largemouth bass at Goose Lake? What's their outlook looking like?
I'd say they're looking pretty good. It produces nice largemouth, and they're abundant right now. We'll do some more electrofishing there this year. But Phil, what do you think? They're running probably up to 15 inches for sure out there now, 14, 15 inches.
Yeah, we just ran frame nets there on Monday, and we picked up 3 bass, I think. And so that gear is not a good way to catch bass. But we did pick up a few, so I'm up to, I think the big one was maybe 17 and a half inches. But they're as round as footballs. They are healthy. So they'll be a little heavier than what you would expect for their length, I think.
Okay. A couple project questions. Approximately, do you have a timeline for when the Red Fox project might take place, and any plans to make boating access at Dead Timber?
I'd like to see Red Fox done in the next 3 to 4 years. That's kind of up to Jeff Jackson and what the budgets look like. It's a relatively small project, so I'm hoping we can get something done there quickly. Out of those 4 projects with Niobrara's underway now, the other ones, Red Fox will probably be the next one on the list to get done. The other 2, Buckskin and Willow Creek, are going to be bigger projects. But I would think within, I don't know. Again, I'm guessing because Jackson's got his thumb on the budget, but 3 to 4 years. And Dead Timber, at this point, no, we don't have any plans to put boating access at Dead Timber.
Okay. What about at Buckskin? Any problems with vegetation there?
I saw that come in on the chat line too. Yes, that is the invasive curly pondweed, and it gets bad at Buckskin, and that's another reason we need a rehab project. We need to deepen some of those areas on the lake. If the low dose early spring treatment shows as much promise as we think it's going to, that we're doing around the state and at Mascentine, Buckskin will be on that list to treat that curly pondweed. So we're going to have to see, give Mascentine another year. So we try to treat around the boat dock at Buckskin. We try to treat down the bank some. but it does get bad with vegetation. Don't let that stop you from going up and fishing, though. Some years curlyleaf is worse than others, but don't let that keep you from going up to buckskin and going fishing, because you can fish around that. And there's some really nice bass and bluegill on Buckskin Hills.
All right, and then a couple walleye questions. So at Calamus, seems like the walleye population really, or at least our catch per unit effort, took off in 2022. Any thoughts or insights on why that might be?
You know, we hadn't changed anything in terms of stocking or regulations or anything out there. We had a year where, and Jordan, you know how this goes. You go out and set your nets, and it's like every fish in the lake swims in your net, and it's an anomaly. And you think, oh my God, things, you know, this is fantastic. And you go out the next year and you're back to reality. And I think that was one of those years where we had abundant walleye, but for some reason, you know, our catch was really, really high, and it was an anomaly. You know, I'm pretty happy with where the Calamus is for walleye right now. We're trying to keep that recruitment up with our fry fingerling stocking. And I didn't get a chance to mention that you know, for 10 years, we did OTC marking to evaluate which is better, fry or fingerling. And this will be in the report that I'm going to put on the website. 5 years, the fry did better. 5 years, the fingerling did better. Not outstandingly better on either one, but they're both contributing. And we're going to continue both because we want to keep those year classes as strong as we can.
Yep. What about down at Lewis and Clark? Any thoughts on the fishing guides, and are they having any impact on the walleye population down there?
That's kind of a loaded question. There are a number of fishing guides that are working Lewis and Clark Lake, and they do have to take a lot of clients out. I don't think they have any more impact there than they do on any of our other lakes at this point. But they are on the water a lot. And we have, you know, people question us about that, what impact they have. And at this point, like I say, it's not any worse up there than anywhere else. And you go up into South Dakota, and they're covered up in guides up there. And so I think we live with them the way they are. They're getting people out on the water, getting people out to enjoy the resource. So, you know, there's good things about it, and there potentially could be bad things about it. So it's hard to say.
Sure. Any cut bows being stocked up in your area this year?
Yes, we just some are going in at Tawazuka Park Lake and Columbus on Saturday. So they're part of that, and that spring trout stocking. Some of them are cut bows, but those two lakes I know for sure. And that Joe Cassidy let us know that those will be cut bows.
Okay. And then just to wrap up, you know, we had quite a few questions asking about projects and kind of status updates on those. Can you just mention how, and this was covered with our aquatic habitat meeting earlier in the week, about how we can't go about this alone, and just talk about the partnerships that you've developed in your district, and how we can how we utilize those partnerships to get those projects done.
Yeah, we rely on people, and you know, and I got to put in a plug for Aquatic Habitat Stamp. You know, we were the first state in the nation to have that Aquatic Habitat Stamp. I've been doing this a long time, and funding has always been a problem. But when that Aquatic Habitat Stamp came about, that gave us the surge of funding that we can take and match with other partners on it. And it really jump-started our rehab process and our aquatic habitat process. But we have the NRDs are great to work with. We got the Lower Elkhorn NRD, which will be a partner at Willow Creek. We got Lewis and Clark NRD, which will be a partner up at Buckskin Hills. You know, try to get these people together and kick some money in to the system for us, and we can use that aquatic habitat money as a match. And yeah, we're always trying. You know, when we did Summit, we had Burt County working with us. The Papio NRD has always been a great partner for us. You know, we're still doing some ongoing projects with some shoreline work up at Cramper Lake, and And whatever we need up there, Papio NRD has been a great partner with us. So yeah, we value those partnerships, and we really appreciate the folks that work with us in the other agencies.
With that, that's all I have right now. As they mentioned, reach out with any questions you got throughout the year, and I'll let each of you wrap it up. Thank you all.
Thanks, folks. Enjoyed having you tune in tonight. As always, if you ever have any questions, give us a call, shoot us an email, stop by the office in Norfolk, visit us. We'll see you out on the lakes. If we're not working, there's a pretty good chance we're going to be out there fishing. So we hope to see you out there on the water, and thanks a lot for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I just want to reiterate what Jeff says. Don't be afraid to give us a holler. If you have any questions, question some of the coffee shop gossip, whatever it may be, and need the answer, give us a call or stop in if you're local, however it works. So appreciate you guys. Thanks a bunch.